Have you ever asked yourself why some women live alone? Not just single, but seemingly untouched by the pursuit of partnership. No boyfriend, no casual flings, no signs of searching. The reason isn't loneliness. It isn't a scarcity of options or a trail of heartbreaks. It's something far more uncomfortable. Something that threatens to unravel everything we were taught about a woman's worth and place in the world. Because when a woman chooses solitude, she's not retreating, she's reclaiming. And that kind of reclamation doesn't come with fanfare. There are no claps, no likes, no crowds, only silence, strength, and a level of freedom most people aren't ready to understand. No, she's not cold, she's careful. She's not lost, she's laser-focused. She no longer burns herself out keeping others warm. She's done setting herself on fire just to be seen. There is something profoundly radical about a woman who doesn't seek validation through a relationship. Her very existence shatters the illusion of emotional dependency. She doesn't need saving, and that scares people, especially men who've been taught to define their masculinity through someone else's need. Especially women who haven't yet unlearned the myth that partnership is the ultimate prize. Carl Jung once said, "What you deny in yourself becomes your shadow." And in many ways, these women are walking shadows of society's suppressed truth. They are who others dream of becoming, but fear they'll be judged if they do. They don't beg for love, they breathe choice. They don't perform to be picked, they protect their peace. They don't chase fairy tales, they create sanctuaries. And that unsettles people. Because in a world obsessed with urgency, these women have discovered the sacred rhythm of being enough on their own. The woman who lives without a boyfriend isn't waiting. She's walking on a path where nothing is begged for and everything is chosen. Where validation is replaced by presence. Where love isn't a means of completion, but a conscious decision to overflow. That's why she draws so much criticism. That's why people scramble to label her cold, bitter, damaged. But behind her silence is a presence so commanding. It challenges the emotional status quo. She doesn't want just any love. She wants one that doesn't require her to shrink. And until that love comes, she stands, strong, whole, unapologetically herself. You might not get it. You might call it pride, ego, or baggage. But somewhere deep inside you, there's a whisper, a quiet, unsettling question. What if this path is the only one that leads to the love that truly matters? The silence surrounding this woman isn't void, it's sanctuary. And those who fail to understand that space often mistake her stillness for arrogance. But she didn't build her boundaries to push the world away. She built them so she'd never lose herself again. Jung also said, "What we don't face in ourselves, we project onto others." And maybe that's why so many women still confuse solitude with absence. In truth, it's the birthplace of identity. While the world frantically looks outward to feel whole, she turned inward. She stared into the abyss of her own history and met the ghosts of abandonment, childhood wounds, and the trauma that masqueraded as love. Her decision to be alone didn't come from a fresh wound. It came from a scar that finally closed. She didn't give up on love. She just stopped accepting the kind that dimmed her light. She's known chaos. She's loved until there was nothing left of her. She's given when she should have walked, begged for what should have been freely offered. But she's awake now. An awakening isn't a lightning strike. It's a slow, agonizing series of disappointments that stop breaking your heart and start rebuilding your truth. What you see now isn't distance. It's discernment. What looks like aloofness is emotional clarity. And clarity, unlike charm, can't be faked. She no longer craves promises. She seeks presence. And that makes her unreachable to some. Not because she's too much, but because she's finally enough for herself. She doesn't want rescuing. She wants recognition. She doesn't need fancy words. She needs someone who has the courage to meet her at her depth. That's where most walk away. Not because she's hard to love, but because she won't settle for anything half-formed. And when a woman becomes whole, the world responds with extremes. Admiration from those seeking wholeness too. Fear from those still hiding in fragments. She doesn't want to fix anyone. She wants to walk beside someone who has already done the work. Until then, she remains alone, not out of bitterness, but loyalty. Loyalty to her own soul. She's not hiding, she's preserving herself. There's a vast difference. But we live in a world that mistrusts women who don't come in pairs. A world where love is still sold like a reward for compliance. A world that forgets that authenticity and convention are rarely friends. So when she hears, "You're too picky," she doesn't flinch. She smiles, not because it's funny, but because she's heard it before. From people who have no idea how long it took her to raise her standards. She's not seeking perfection. She's seeking peace. She's seeking someone who won't turn her self-worth into collateral damage. And that kind of clarity rattles the world. She is living proof that wholeness doesn't require partnership, that truth alone strips the masks off many. Men who prey on insecurity grow quiet. Women who fear being alone grow defensive. But she isn't here to prove anything. She's just being. And nothing threatens the status quo more than a woman who simply is. She's not in a rush. She respects her own rhythm. She values depth over performance, presence over potential, soul over strategy. And when she says no, it's not a power play, it's a boundary. When she walks away, it's not drama, it's self-respect. When she stays home instead of going on a date with someone unaligned, it's not arrogance, it's alignment. That clarity, earned through heartbreak, silence, and surrender, is her rebellion. She doesn't live to please, she lives to be, and that is what makes her dangerous to a system built on dependency. What unsettles people most isn't her solitude, it's her peace, the kind of peace that comes from knowing herself so intimately, she no longer needs external definition. Carl Jung said, "Those who look outward dream. Those who look inward awaken." And she chose the path of awakening. She stripped the illusions, she faced the demons, she stared into the abyss of codependency and climbed her way out. Now, she doesn't define herself through the lens of anyone else. She sees herself, and that changes everything. How many times have you wondered if being alone is failure or freedom? How often have you tried to explain your singleness as if it were a flaw? She's felt it too. She's cried for love in a world that praises even the most toxic relationships, because at least they're not alone. But one day she realized, being invisible in a relationship is lonelier than being alone. So she made a pact with herself, with her ancestors, with the woman she was becoming. Never again. Her path isn't straight. There are storms, there are echoes of doubt, but every choice is conscious. Every step forward, sacred. She knows love is not supposed to consume or diminish. The love she waits for liberates, amplifies, stands tall beside her, not over her. Until then, she grows alone, not out of bitterness, but out of devotion to her own evolution. She is the living embodiment of Jung's individuation. She walked through fire. She faced her shadow. She dove into the depths of her own psyche and came back whole. And now, having met herself, she refuses to be half of anything ever again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone who has already completed themselves. That's rare. That's intimidating. That requires emotional courage. And most people are still loving out of fear, not truth. So if she walks alone today, it's because her steps echo with integrity. Her no is sacred. Her absence is a reminder that love, real love, is not owed. It's earned. It's shared. It's built, not begged for. She no longer proves anything to anyone. And in that certainty, everything shifts, because a woman who has found herself is a revolution, not because she destroys, but because she illuminates. The woman who lives alone now is not the girl who once begged to be loved. She broke, and that break was her liberation. Because sometimes it's only in the shattering that we meet our true shape. Carl Jung said, "The tree that reaches heaven must have roots that touch hell." And she has lived that truth. She descended, faced generational pain, broke the cycles, refused to carry stories that weren't hers. She learned it is not her job to heal others by wounding herself. And when she stopped settling, the world tried to shame her back into silence. But she stood tall, first in fear, then in clarity, now in power. She's not unreachable. She simply won't be invaded. There's a difference. She still opens her heart, but only to those who come in truth. And that is everything. If this message stirred something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even recognize a piece of yourself, then you're exactly where you need to be. This channel isn't just about words. It's about awakening. It's for the women who are reclaiming their power, rewriting their stories, and walking boldly into their truth, even if it means walking alone. So if you're tired of surface-level noise and ready for depth, healing, and unapologetic authenticity, hit that subscribe button. Join a community where silence is sacred, growth is real, and solitude is strength. Because this isn't just content, it's a revolution, and it begins with you.